Boxing Weekly on the Gruely True Sports Network. I'm your host for Inside Boxing Weekly, Mike Goodpasser. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, as always. Of course, he's wrote a few books he'd probably want to tell you about. And it's starting off with Intimate Warfare, The Tale of Gotti Ward, which is what, if you like Gotti Ward, and who doesn't if you're a boxing fan, you definitely got to read Intimate Warfare. Also, Blood on My Notebook. And you want to tell everybody about your newest book with Jerry Fitch, John Raspani?
Yes, I do, Mike. Thanks so much. It's a few more rounds. Jerry, he won't mind me saying this, is a little older than I am, and his experiences are different, obviously. So I like to say it's like combining two generations of obviously boxing fans in the beginning, and then we started writing. He started writing earlier in his life. I picked up the pen later, and so we combined memories. Jerry knew a lot of fighters. I knew a lot of fighters. He was friends with Tony Zale and some of the older guys. He went to a lot of events, and then I got into it with Andre Ward and Kareem Mayfield and a lot of the Bay Area fighters and things we covered, personal stories like mine when I was a kid. Just a total joy to write it, Mike.
All right, John, we're going to talk, and you can find all those on Amazon today. We're going to talk a little boxing. We're going to finish it up looking at Devin Haney against Jorge Linares for, I guess everything's for a title belt, but for a championship belt. And before that, though, we're going to talk a little. Errol Spence is going to fight Manny Pacquiao. Does this surprise you, John?
Yeah, kind of. But I mean, because remember a few years ago after Errol Spence beat, who did he beat? Danny Garcia. Not Danny Garcia. I can't remember who he beat.
Mikey Garcia?
Maybe it was the Sean Porter fight that he won. And Manny Pacquiao was there, and he got in the ring, and everybody was talking about how he was going to fight Errol Spence next, and then suddenly it all went quiet, and then Errol gets into the terrible automobile accident that somehow he survives. He comes back and he fights Danny Garcia, and he wins. He looked good, but there was something missing there. Maybe it was because of whatever. I don't know. There was just something different. And perhaps Manny said, you know what? Even though I'm 2 years older and all that, I'm still faster than this guy. I could take him. So I was surprised, but I mean, this is a great way to go out. I mean, the guy's got massive balls, obviously. If he wins, he's already a legend in a lot of people's minds. But I mean, that cements it in mine. I mean, at 42 years old to beat the young Errol Spence. If he loses, hopefully doesn't get hurt, collects a huge payday, goes back to the Philippines, and gets ready to run for the presidency. He's a senator now. So looking at it in the big picture, pretty shrewd on Manny's part and pretty gutsy. And I like that because he's going for it. And that's what we like. We like that about athletes, and he's definitely doing it.
Yeah, and when you talked about that, he's going to run for the presidency next year. He's a senator right now in the Philippines. And I mean, it's a good way to kick off your campaign, too, if you get upset Errol Spence or even put up a good fight. Freddie Roach said last year that he thought this year would be Pacquiao's last year because of that possible presidential run. And he said that he would have 2 fights this year. So is it possible, if he was to beat Spence, that he would fight Crawford at the end of the year?
I don't know. I mean, I would think, to me, I mean, they're both undefeated, obviously. I would think, I don't want to push it too much, but Manny's a different guy. I mean, he's a guy who came up from nothing. He's achieved a lot, and he's given away almost as much money as he's made. I wouldn't be shocked if he said, "Yeah, okay, I'm going to fight Terrence Crawford next." I mean, the one thing he's got going against Errol Spence is he's faster. He's got faster hands, and Crawford's a little bit trickier in the sense that I think he's obviously faster than Errol Spence too. But Errol Spence hits so damn hard. So I would hope it's one and done at 42. But like I said, Manny goes to walks to the beat and punches to the beat of his own drummer. So he might be thinking that way, but I doubt it. I think he's thinking, look, I got to beat this guy. Then we'll see what happens.
All right. Can he beat this guy?
Yes. Yes.
And if he beats this guy, why not take a shot at Crawford at the end of the year? Because if he could pull off beating Spence and Crawford, I mean, he definitely, I think if you look at their resumes, he's already surpassed Floyd Mayweather, whether he won against him or lost against him. if you were to add these two wins at the age of 42 on top of that, I mean, Manny Pacquiao then, with those two wins, has to be at least a top 10 or top 20 guy all time, doesn't he?
Oh, for sure, for sure. He's a massive underdog against Errol Spence. I think it's 4-1 right now. I got odds a few days ago. It'll get closer as the fight gets closer. So obviously it's an uphill battle, but oh yeah, to me, even if he beats Errol Spence, he's got to make his legacy easily in the top 15 for sure. I because just what he's done. He beats Keith Thurman, never been beat, who obviously isn't at the same level, but hey, he never lost. He beats Errol Spence, never been beat, and then you might be onto something if he beats Crawford. But I think Crawford would be harder to beat just because Crawford's faster, and he might be able to rumble with Manny on the same way in the beginning. I think that's what Manny's thinking. He's going to try to rumble in the early. But there's also some scary parts here, Mike. If you remember against Thurman, Manny got gassed, and if he hadn't hit Thurman with that body shot, Keith Thurman was coming on. I still think if that fight had been 15 rounds, Keith Thurman probably would have won it because Manny was really looking tired. He was looking all of his age before that body shot. So how he sustains that and doesn't get tired against Errol Spence when Errol hits so hard, he's going to have to be on top of his game. So, like I said, if I'm him, I'm thinking one at a time right now.
Yeah, but if you look at Errol Spence's career, he's never fought anybody like Manny Pacquiao either. I mean, has he fought anybody that hits harder than Pacquiao?
But remember, Manny Pacquiao doesn't knock people out anymore like he used to. So he sure hits hard because he's sharp and fast and all that. But no, if you look at it like that, I don't think Sean Porter hits as hard as Manny Pacquiao. So really, in a sense, there isn't anyone. But Manny isn't the big knockout guy like he was before. So I think if I'm Errol Spence, I'm more concerned about his footwork, his angles, his speed, and all that. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not really worried about his power at this point. Errol Spence, I saw him get buzzed earlier in his career by somebody, but since then, obviously Mikey Garcia didn't do anything to him. And remember, Mikey's knocking out everybody at 135, 140, and he didn't even do anything. Danny Garcia didn't do anything. Well, Danny weights too much anyway, in my view. So, yeah, it could end up being kind of a slow starting fight in the sense it's a bit of a chess match because they're feeling each other out. And then as it goes on, then it's going to get really intriguing.
Yeah, because Manny's last knockout his last stoppage was Lucas Batiste, but Batiste was way past his prime.
Yes.
And actually, the last time Manny was in a fight where somebody legitimately got knocked out, it was Manny.
Yeah, and that was a brutal knockout, and that's another thing that makes him so phenomenal in my mind. I mean, I thought he was done. Fighters, we were talking about this last week. You don't get knocked out like that so brutally and come back. And then he loses to Jeff Horn. I mean, the fact that he's able to regroup, move on, and still have a lot left is just amazing to me, especially when you get knocked out like that. And he got knocked out earlier in his career or stopped, but not like that. I mean, he was out. So that alone is just an incredible achievement by Manny Pacquiao.
All right, let's transition. Let's go to Anthony Joshua, who Eddie Hearn, I saw an interview on DAZN with him, that this is not necessarily Alexander Usyk. He is also considering Andy Ruiz, Dillian White, and of course the 115-year-old Luis Ortiz as options for Anthony Joshua. I think that's crazy. I think the only option here is Usyk because when I look at this, he's beaten Ruiz. I know he split with him, but to me, it was a fluke knockout. He split with Ruiz. He's already beaten Dillian White. Why would you go back and fight one of those guys unless Eddie Hearn's just trying to keep it safe for the bigger fight?
Yeah, that would be the reason. Usyk is the fight that I think the most attractive fight. I mean, not that it's the fight, but yeah, he's rumbled with Ruiz twice. What we saw from Andy Ruiz last time, I can't see it happening again. Luis Ortiz, like you said, is 100 years old, even though he's still dangerous at times. So it's got to be Usyk. That's the way I see it. And Eddie's just being the promoter that he is. He's just being crafty and playing games. And he was very mad by what happened with the Deontay Wilder Fury fiasco. He said that he was assured that everything was good. So I saw some of that interview too. And actually, I don't blame him for being annoyed because he looks like a real moron here with a moron/idiot with what happened here. But I still find it all intriguing in that sense with the heavyweights now. At least that's what they are. They're not talented, but at least we have a little drama going on, so that's good.
Yeah, but would Usyk have a shot against Joshua? I mean, when you look at it, the other two guys would probably have a puncher's chance. I don't think Usyk's strong enough to knock Joshua out. Is he a good enough boxer to outpoint him?
Well, what we saw again, see, we go on the last fight, and a lot of times that's good, and sometimes that's dangerous because the last fight doesn't always mean that that's what you're going to get in his next fight. After what I just said about Andy Ruiz, so you got to be careful. But I think the only way Usyk gets Joshua out of there is Joshua gets gassed, and he's been known to do that. He gets tired a lot in fights. A trainer that I really respect says that's because even after all this time, he still doesn't breathe right. So he gasses himself out. So that would be about the only way. But that Joshua saw what Chisora did with Usyk, and he saw how he pressured him and did all that. Now that isn't really Joshua's style to pressure that hard. But since Usyk looked like he was ready to run out of the ring and say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm sure he liked that. But Usyk's a tough guy, Mike. He came back. He won that fight somehow. But that didn't prove that he could rumble with the big boys. That's the thing. So it's just, I think what we like is the fact that we've never seen this. We've seen, in a sense, already seen Joshua with Ruiz. We've already seen Joshua with Dillian White. And of course we haven't with Ortiz, but so we're more intrigued a little bit, but I think Eddie Hearn is also thinking about what you said too. He doesn't want to think about it. He doesn't want to blow the big one because they both win. If Fury wins and Joshua wins, then we got the big one probably at Wembley, I would hope. That's what everybody wanted. So you don't want to blow that because that's the big payday. So he's being crafty, but he's also probably thinking, I don't know if I really want to. So who's more dangerous or who's less dangerous? So that's what you got to think about.
Yeah, and when we look at this, everybody always wants to compare Usyk to Evander Holyfield. And if I remember right, Holyfield's first couple fights at heavyweight, people kind of questioned whether he had the power to fight a guy like Mike Tyson, because if you remember, he fought an old James Tillis and an old Pinklin Thomas. I think Tillis went 5 or 6 rounds with him. The knockout wasn't devastating. And the same thing with Thomas, who I think went 6 or 7 rounds with him. So could just be the fact that maybe he needs to adjust to the weight a little bit?
I don't know. I didn't.
I'm just hoping, John. Come on.
I didn't see any indication of that in the Chisora fight. He looked like he was fighting like he always does. So power wise, it doesn't necessarily go up with you. Holyfield wasn't a one punch knockout guy most of the time, but he was just an accumulation of punches, and you have to sit down on your punches to do that. I haven't seen Usyk do that very much. A little bit of cruiserweight. But what was happening in the Chisora fight, he was not in any hurry or inclined to stand there and rumble. So we'll just have to see. But the thing about Joshua, though, is, he has been buzzed a number of times and he's been knocked out. So Usyk's probably figuring, look, if I can get a temple shot in on him, I could beat him.
Yeah, but will he throw enough punches to get a temple shot in? That's my problem with Usyk. He just doesn't throw a lot of punches.
Well, again, he's got to be thinking he's going to have to. And I bet you he's thinking he's got to survive the first 4 or 5 rounds, and then he's going to start coming on later. Nobody's going to forget what Klitschko did to Joshua. He knocked him down hard, and you could see that in the previous round where Joshua got gassed again. So maybe he's thinking, look, if I can get past 5 or 6 rounds with this guy, he gets tired, then I can really start rallying. Maybe I'll be able to stop him or whatever. That's what I would be thinking. Just because Joshua is very susceptible when he gets tired, and I wouldn't say he's got a China chin, but you can get him that way. You can hurt him. So what else can you put your hat on here and hope that's what's going to happen? I would think that's what Usyk's thinking right now.
Yeah, that's the only thing I would be thinking. So, I think that I don't think that we'll see Fury and Joshua after this, even if they both win.
You don't think they're gonna
No,
have a big
I think Joshua and Hearn are then going to throw a big stink because of the way they were just treated, and then they're going to say they're not going to fight him, and this is going to drag out for another year.
Well, nothing would surprise me in boxing. As we say all the time, boxing's very good at shooting itself in the foot, but I hope they don't do that. I would think that would be the ultimate stupidity. Like Spence and Crawford. I think most people are so sick. You don't even hear people talk about it anymore. And now you've got Spence going back for a second. What we were just talking about, you got Spence fighting Manny, and where's Terrence Crawford? I mean, he's nowhere. No one is even talking about
Well,
him.
Josh Taylor. I mean, Josh Taylor against Terrence Crawford is a fight I would like to see after what I just saw from Josh Taylor.
Well, but I'm sure Terrence Crawford would rather be fighting Manny Pacquiao than Josh Taylor, right? I mean, the big money is Manny Pacquiao. So that's all Terrence Crawford has is a fight with Josh
Well,
Taylor.
the interesting thing about this is I want to see what the Errol Spence fans do, because when it was talked about Manny and Crawford, they said, well, he should get no credit because Manny is old. I wonder if the Spence fans will still believe that if Spence fights Pacquiao or beats Pacquiao.
Depends on the fans. I mean, if they're honest, they would say the same thing. But you know how fanatical boxing fans can be. They don't want to. They can say something about one guy, and then the other guy's in the same situation, and they won't say it. So it is the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Spence in this fight. In a sense, if he loses, he's been beat by an old man who hadn't fought in 2 years and is a senator in the Philippines. If he wins, he beat an old man who's a senator in the Philippines.
Or maybe he beat the president of the Philippines. That makes it even better.
So. I mean, I don't want to say he's in a lose-lose position because, who knows? Maybe Errol Spence is thinking, look, I beat Manny Pacquiao. I'm going to make 20-some million bucks. I'm done. Who knows?
Yeah. It's not a lose-lose situation because it's still Manny Pacquiao. All right. We have a fascinating matchup on DAZN this weekend as basically we got youth versus experience. Devin Haney defends his championship against the excellent 3-weight alphabet champion, Jorge Linares. Linares, of course, got starched in one round when he moved up a year or two ago. He actually came back down, fought his last fight, won that. I mean, do you give Linares any kind of a shot here?
Not really. He's got all kinds of skills. I mean, yeah, he's got a shot. I should say that. I think he'll be very interesting in the early going. Linares is one of those guys too that he's good and everything, but there's always something missing. I wasn't quite sure what, but he's, and I hate to say this, but because I love boxers and I love their guts, but he seems to lack that grit sometimes that fighters have that I've seen. He gets tough going. I mean, Lomo hit him with a body shot. Now, I don't know how that, I mean, I can imagine how that felt, but he didn't get up, and that was kind of surprising. Not saying anything that he quit or anything, but that was surprising. He was giving Lomo a heck of a fight. The Luke Campbell fight, he had Luke Campbell hurt, and then Luke really came back and rallied. So I kind of think it's going to be competitive for a number of rounds, and then Haney will win either by a stoppage or by decision. Eddie Hearn, again, back to him. He knows what he's doing. He figures that Linares is on the back nine, and I think he is, especially after he got stopped last year. That was stunning. But, again, Linares is a proud champ, got a lot of skill. I think he's going to give it his all. And he will do good at times, but at times. But I think Haney wins it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Haney will stop him. I think Haney needs to stop him to make a statement. I mean, I would love to see him and Teofimo Lopez. Hopefully, Ryan Garcia gets everything straightened out and gets back in the mix, because that division with those three guys and maybe throw in Lomachenko is one of the better divisions in boxing if you just look at the top 5.
It sure is, and they're all young. And don't forget you got Gervonta Davis if he doesn't end up in jail here soon.
Wait a second. I always forget Gervonta Davis because he could always end up in jail here soon, and I don't think he ever has any intention of fighting anybody that can give him a fight.
Yeah, well, if he's going to want to be taken seriously, if he's still free, he's going to have to fight one of these guys soon. So maybe they might want to do a cash out on him. I don't know. Sounds cruel, but he's got a lot of problems outside the ring. So he's got some skill too. He's a little guy, I mean, but, he's got some skill. But, yeah, I hope Ryan Garcia gets it together, whatever's going on with him. Our best to him. But that division, don't forget Boots Enos, too. Boots is 7-0, 25 knockouts. He's a super talented guy from Philadelphia. You know how tough they are for Philadelphia. They don't get a lot of credit. And then Teofimo, he's probably moving up to 140 here pretty soon after this fight with the Aussie. So, yeah, this from 135 to 140, Mike, we got Prograis at 140. We got Josh Taylor. These guys, Ramirez, these guys are talented fighters. So it's fun to watch those guys.
Yeah, hopefully they don't just go ahead and take their shots at Spence and Crawford and try to move up. I think there's a lot more to be said for guys to stay in the division. It's just like I see people rip Marvin Hagler because he never moved up to fight, Michael Spinks. But to me, to be able to dominate an entire division for almost a decade is more impressive than even moving up, because it just is. I mean, I don't know why guys have to constantly jump. And people forget, I don't even remember there being a 168-pound division in the mid 80s. There probably was. Nobody paid attention to it. But there's a big difference between 160 and 175. But
Yeah.
I'd like to see guys just stay there and clean out the division. But, we watched this last week where a guy wins all 4 titles, and he talked about he's only the 6th person to ever do that. And it doesn't matter, because we all know that sometime in the next 6 months, Josh Taylor's going to be stripped by somebody, and then it's going to be fractured again.
Yeah, the boxing with all the damn belts, they don't want the unification thing. They want to have all those belts so they can. Yeah, it's funny. If you ever asked any of those people that run those organizations, WBO, IBF, WBC, WBA, you asked, or whoever, why do you feel like WBC drives me crazy? They always have to have some kind of special belt when they have a big fight. They had it with Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders. It's like, why? Don't you understand that by doing this, that you're diminishing the whole importance, at least to me, and probably a number of older people, maybe even some younger ones. You're making the title that they won less important because you're just handing them out. And I hate that they do that. Well, it's because it brings more importance to the fight. Bullshit. It doesn't bring more importance to it. It diminishes it, in my very humble opinion. So I wish there was a way to get them to stop it, but they think that they're doing the right thing because they're doing the right thing for themselves, not for the sport. And I absolutely hate it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at this, the one that gets to me is Jermell Charlo, who's going to fight to unify a belt against Brian Castano. And I'm sorry, but Brian Castano is a guy that won his title by beating Cedric Vitu. He had a draw with Erislandy Lara, which that would have been a great result 5 years ago. He defended his title against Whale Motoso, and then he beat Patrick Teixeira. So I don't know how that qualifies him to fight Jermell Charlo. I don't know how it qualifies to make him a champion.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's almost like we like to say A league, B league. It's like they're in the B leagues when they're doing that. Yeah, they got a title, but you go, so what? I mean, Charlo, he better be careful. He better get the big fights, because I think he's a very talented fighter, and he needs the big fights now to prove how good he is, because he's 30 something now, and he's running out of time, I think. So he needs to step up, both of them. They need the big fights, the Charlo twins, instead of fighting these other guys to get in a position for the big money. And I don't know if it's mismanagement. I don't know what it is, but it's been disappointing for me watching those guys, because they've got skill, and they deserve, they should get the big fights at some point, but it's just not happening. They certainly deserve it more than Demetrius Andrade.
All right. Did you see the Mike Tyson special on ABC?
I did not.
You didn't? Don't. It's the same stuff we've already seen. And it's all about, how Cus D'Amato would have saved Mike Tyson. And it's just BS, like everything else that has to do with Mike Tyson. But ABC is trying to make some money off of it. The second part's next week. We get to hear about Desiree Washington and how he was tricked there, which he may have been. But you know what? You're a grown-ass man. You're the heavyweight champion of the world. Why are you hanging out in clubs? Why are you bringing women back to your room that are under the age of 21 at 2:00 in the morning?
Well, I've always had an opinion about Tyson. Yeah, it obviously broke his heart when Cuss died, and he had a lot of those guys that were handling him died, and splitting with Kevin Rooney. I still think things might have been a little bit different. I mean, he obviously had all kinds of problems. If you've ever read about him, his childhood was the shits. His mom, all kinds of things. I mean, not making excuses for him. I'm just saying. And he obviously was not a very mature person, even when he was 20, 21, winning the heavyweight title.
Yeah, but don't you think Cus D'Amato could have done something about that maturity by reining him in and kind of being more of a father figure to him than just an old white dude that was using him? And I really think that's what this was. I mean, when you look at the interviews with Teddy Atlas, you look at the interviews with other people, and the way Mike Tyson was allowed to basically run wild and do whatever he wanted in that house, in that training camp. I mean, to me, it doesn't scream to me that Cus D'Amato really did him any favors other than giving him a place to live.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, Cus should have done that, but he thought Tyson was special, and special athletes, they get special treatment. And that
but that's the problem. That's the problem. I mean, if you look at this, I mean, it's just like the two greatest quarterbacks of all time. To me, Tom Brady, Joe Montana, no special treatment. They were guys that had to work their ass off to get to where they were supposed to be. Sugar Ray Robinson didn't get special treatment growing up. To me, it seems like when we treat people like they're special because they can throw a punch or shoot a ball, that we do more of a disservice to them ever achieving what they could. I mean, Peyton Manning wasn't as great as Tom Brady. Peyton Manning grew up rich. Peyton Manning was protected by the NFL when there were questions about him coming out of college. And some people they throw by the wayside. Other people they treat special. And to me, if you've got somebody and you think they're special, maybe don't treat them that way. Maybe if you don't make them believe they're special, they'll work their ass off.
Yeah, I mean, there are examples of look at Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, he grew up poor. But then when he won the gold medal, they started treating him like he was special, and he had some problems.
Yeah.
But later, and Oscar De La Hoya is another example of somebody that, wow, later on, he had issues when he was younger. They just didn't talk about it. He had a very bad gambling problem and other things going on with other things. So, I think what you can do with these guys is you can help them instead of just enabling them. That's what you do. And you say, no, that's not okay to run around the house. That's not okay. We got curfews. And if you don't like it, get out. I think that would have been the best thing for Tyson. It might have made him grow up a little bit, but.
Well, put it like this. Cus D'Amato made him dependent on people. And when Cus died, and then, Jacobs dies, Caton's the only one left. He wasn't really as close to Caton as he was the other guys. So then, of course, in walks Don King. Mike's got to be dependent on somebody, and Don King is that guy, and that's why that happened. I don't know if Kevin Rooney could have stopped that because Don King's a pretty smart devil.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
I mean, Don King was going to get his hooks in him anyways at one point or another. Even if Cus would have lived, I think Don King would have figured out a way. Because I think Don King may have used Robin Givens and her mother to be, I mean, he did use them that way. I mean, once they were there, it was pretty easy for him.
Yeah, that whole thing is just a mess, and that's another reason why I won't watch it. I did read Tyson's book. I did watch his one-man stage play. It's fascinating in kind of a train wreck kind of a way, but there are careers that you read about in sports that you wonder what if. That doesn't necessarily mean there would have been any change, but I'm still going to believe that if a lot of these things hadn't happened with Tyson, Cus was going to die. His health wasn't very good. But Jimmy Jacobs hadn't got cancer and died so young in his 50s. Who knows? Maybe they would have been able to reel him in. But with everything that happened, and you're right. I mean, maybe Don King would have. Don King was a very shrewd guy. He might have talked Tyson away from those guys. It's very possible. But then again, he might not have. There might have been an alternate.
I think this, in the end, the style that Tyson fought with, I think if Cus and him stay there, maybe you can make the case that run lasts 2, 3, maybe even 4 years longer, up at about the age of 28. But I think also the style he fought in, we all know is not conducive to fighting for 15 years as a dominant fighter.
Yes, it's very true. Yeah, and that's what I think too. I think the reign would have been longer, and he might have stayed out of more trouble. He still would have gotten trouble, I think, Tyson, but maybe not to the degree that he did. At least he would have had an alternate voice in his ear instead of everybody saying, "You're fine, Mike. You're fine, Mike. You're fine, Mike," and that doesn't do anybody any good.
No, the only thing that does is cause what you saw. It's kind of like your kids when you're raising them. If you let them go out and do whatever the hell they want, you can't really be surprised when they end up getting in trouble.
Exactly. I mean, how can you be? It's like, well, Dad, you let me do everything I wanted. It's like, well, I thought I was doing the right thing. How could you think you were doing the right thing when you just told me, no curfew, do whatever you want, goof around, take my car? Come on.
Yeah, and the other problem is this. You can also be too hard on somebody, not let them do enough, and it backfires also. So it's a damn crapshoot. And I think in the end, Mike Tyson is what Mike Tyson is, and I think Mike Tyson would have ended up being that either way, and maybe not as bad if they would have stayed alive. But I still think that Cuss had a lot to do with that. And I mean, when people tell me Cuss was one of the top 3 or 4 trainers of all time, it drives me nuts because I just don't see it.
Yeah, and you know what? I guess the thing that amazes me about Mike Tyson is, in a sense, he has rehabilitated his career or whatever his career is. He's a personality now more than anything else. He was in the dirt a number of years ago, couldn't do anything, and now he's loved. I mean, when he got introduced with Holyfield and Lennox Lewis, Tyson got the biggest roar. So the ear biting, all that crap that he did, all those nasty things, people have pretty much moved on from it. And I think he's loved by a lot of people to the point of, as we know, totally ridiculousness.
Yeah.
But he's done a good job with it, with his wife and everything, of rehabilitating his career, and he's made himself marketable. And in a way, that's about the most amazing comeback of all of them.
I don't think it is. I think that he was so popular, though. You remember late 80s. Hell, you was going to pay the 30 or 40 bucks for that pay-per-view, even though you knew it was only going to go 40 seconds, and the other guy may not even get hit, and it's going to be over. I mean, because it was Mike Tyson. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, he was so popular then. And let's face it, people forget the bad stuff after a while. Well, Larry Holmes is a lot more loved now than he ever was when he fought.
Yeah, Larry Holmes wasn't biting some guy's ear off either. And I mean, that really put Tyson's career, that put his image in the dumper for a long time.
Yeah, but he got headbutted. He's trying to take food out of his kids' mouths, John.
He's what?
Don't you remember Holyfield was trying to take food out of his kids' mouths by headbutting him?
Well, that, of course, but Holyfield, it's a different animal. I mean, it's a different story. It's a different image. No, I think Tyson has done a really good job of and yeah, you're right about the memories. People have short memories, but Tyson has helped that too. He has changed his own behavior in some ways, in a lot of ways, actually. He's not nearly as whatever he was, and maybe he's mellowed. The thing with Roy Jones was a big success. I mean, that says something.
Yeah, it does. Is he going to fight again?
Sounded like he was, but I'm not hearing anything anymore. So
no, I think it was one shot. He got some money.
Yeah, he got what, 10 or 15 million, and Lennox Lewis is talking about it, and Holyfield's talking about it, and I mean, I don't know. If you're him, Mike, do you want to fight those guys who beat you? I mean, even though you look,
I would fight Holyfield. Huh? I would fight Holyfield, but I'd only fight Holyfield if it was for real. I would stay the hell away from Lennox Lewis, because Lennox Lewis doesn't look older than 40, 45 years old anyways right now. And Lennox got out when he should have got out.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about Lennox. When there was some kind of slippage there with Klitschko, he cut his losses. He got out. He stayed retired. He's a rich man. He's a smart man just because he got out in time. Mike Tyson didn't know when to get out. Mike Tyson took beatings against guys like Danny Williams that he never should have taken. And I mean, I think that Mike Tyson's a lot farther gone than Lennox Lewis is. I think that would be a bad idea. But I also think this. I think Lennox Lewis is not the kind of guy that's going to go out and, try to beat the hell out of him for it. And I don't think Holyfield would either. I just think that if Tyson ever got the itch to maybe prove that he was better than them and tried to beat him up, I think he would have issues with both of them.
Yeah, that would be the thing. Could Holyfield and Tyson fight an exhibition fight? I mean, could they hold back?
Yeah.
It would, like with the Roy Jones fight, you could see that they were holding back.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, John, but I know he lost to Tyson, or he beat Tyson twice. So Tyson may be the one that wants the revenge. But if that dude took part of my ear, I think I'd probably still want to take part of his. I think it'd be great if they had a rematch and Evander just bit his freaking ear off. And then spit it out, walked out, and said, "We're even, we're done."
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about two very competitive people. And as you know, you're very competitive. I'm competitive. You get in there, you might start thinking, you know what? I've been waiting a long time for this, buddy. Didn't we agree to do this? I don't care. Yeah, I'm going another way with this. So
that's why if Tyson's going to fight again, I would love to see it be Holyfield, because that's the one chance I think there where you would see an actual fight.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you're right about Lewis. Lennox Lewis is a gentleman. He'd do it just for the money. He'd probably donate almost all of it to whoever he thought needed it. and move on. I think that would be about all the motivation he needs, because he doesn't have anything to prove. Maybe Tyson feels like he still has something to prove.
All right, John. Anything else you want to discuss before we wrap it up?
No, we're going to be talking about Daniel Dubois here soon, talking about heavyweight. So, we both like him, even though he lost to Joe Joyce. That's okay. He's coming back from the mangled eye socket that was so damaging in his last fight. So that's coming up, Mike. So we got a lot of great stuff coming up. So as always, with me, and then Fury and Wilder. I mean, there are so many things to write about as a boxing writer now. I love it. So I have to throw a plug in for Max Boxing. We had one on Ron Stander that Mike and I had such an enjoyment of speaking with a number of years ago, talking to Ron Stander, and Ron is it was the anniversary of his fight with Smoke and Joe, and Bill Tibbs did a great job on that. So maxboxing.com, we have a lot of stuff on there that's fun, and then of course I have to say the 3 books that Mike mentioned and that he's reading a few more rounds right now, and we're going to be doing a show on that, I hope, soon.
Yes, we are, with you and Jerry Fitch. I actually read a page yesterday.
Okay.
And then the phone started ringing, and I say I got football practice for my high school team minicamp this week, which makes it hard for me to do just about anything. But it's Memorial Day weekend. I may not have anything to do Sunday or Monday, so that'll be up to my wife and my grandkids. But
well, there is that.
Make sure you check out a few more rounds on Amazon, though, and definitely, which I've already read, Blood on My Notebook and Intimate Warfare. You wrote that with Dennis Taylor, pictures by Ed Mulholland. Make sure you check it out. The first 2 books are great. I haven't read the 3rd yet, so I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I have, but as soon as I read it, I will give you a verbal tongue lashing about how bad the book was. I'm just kidding. I'm figuring every book can't be great, can it?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Yeah. And you had Jerry Fitch. So I know Jerry can write. Isn't Jerry from Cleveland, though?
Yes, indeed.
That doesn't mean he's a Browns fan, does it?
Oh, yes.
Oh, hell. Well, I don't know if we can have Jerry on the show then. I don't like Cleveland Browns.
Jerry hates the Steelers, Mike.
Oh, okay. We're good then.
Yeah.
What's he thinking of Bears?
He doesn't hate my Bears, of course, but he hates the Steelers.
Neither do I.
That's okay. He can hate the Steelers. We're fine with that.
All right, guys. And Sunday night at 9:00 Eastern, we will have a special edition of the Old Time Boxing Show with me and boxing historian Christopher Sheldon. We'll look back at the career of Merciless Ray Mercer, which we will have video of Mercer. Should be a fun show. At some point, me and Chris will get into some kind of an argument, I'm sure. But make sure you check that out at 9:00 Eastern time. Make sure you follow us on at Grueling Truth on Twitter. Go over to our Facebook page, like us there. We're trying to get to 140,000 followers, so hit us up there. But for now, for John Raspani, I'm Mike Goodpastor. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.